Welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're actually embarking on this truly fascinating journey of intellectual and civilizational revival. We're looking at the story of a man who transitioned from pursuing sheer individual academic brilliance to building genuine collective empowerment. This is the life and the enduring legacy of Dr. Ismail Al-Faruqi. We're going to explore how this one scholar didn't just sit back and write books, he actively sought to reshape the thought of an entire ummah, deliberately choosing the power of we over the ego of I.
We're kicking things off with a really powerful dedication from Dr. Salah Abdul Sami Abdul Razak, who is a professor of curriculum and instruction at Capital University, as well as the supervisor of the Pioneers of Thought and Education Project and general supervisor of the International Educational Forum. This whole explanator serves as a tribute. It's basically a direct call to action for modern educators, intellectuals, and really anyone concerned with the revival of knowledge. It's a stark reminder that it's an absolute tragedy when the great scholars of our ummah are ignored and their civilizational legacy is just left inactive. We absolutely have to move beyond our own egos, re-engage with this thought, and bring it back to life through our work, our seminars, and our conferences.
Okay, let's dive right into this incredible timeline. The roots of this legacy start back in Jaffa, Palestine in 1921. He actually began his studies in the mosque and at home under his father, who was a Sharia judge. But just look at this global trajectory. After the establishment of the Zionist state, he briefly joined the resistance before migrating to America, carrying this deep grievance of the East right into the West. He ended up earning 2 master's degrees, one from Indiana University, the other from Harvard, and by 1952 he had his PhD in philosophy. But here is the critical turning point. Despite totally mastering Western philosophy, he felt this profound need to deepen his roots in his own faith. So he literally left the US, traveled to Egypt, and spent 4 years at Al-Azhar University just building a rock-solid Islamic foundation. By the time he settled at Temple University in Pennsylvania in 1968, he had completely transformed from a guy seeking personal truth into this encyclopedic master of both Western and Islamic thought.
And Dr. Al-Faruqi wasn't just highly educated. The man was a true polymath. He was fluent in Arabic, French, and English, and he wrote in all 3 as if they were his mother tongue. Picture this, it's 1972, and Dr. Jamal Barzinji hosts a dinner where he invites Al-Faruqi to speak. For an hour, Al-Faruqi addresses this super diverse gathering of followers from all sorts of religions. At the end of it, a Christian priest raises his hand and says the exact words you see on screen. He had learned more about Christianity that single night than in his past 30 years of formal study. I mean, wow! It just perfectly captures Al-Faruqi's absolute mastery of comparative religion.
So, what did he actually do with all this genius? Well, he produced a massive intellectual output. We're talking 25 books and over 100 academic papers, which he neatly structured into 4 distinct pillars, or axes, to revive the Muslim mind. As you can see, these are Islamic civilization, comparative religion, the Islamization of knowledge, and the Zionist phenomenon. Getting a grasp on these 4 pillars is absolutely key to understanding his whole civilizational project.
Let's look at Axis 1, Islamic civilization, focusing on the monumental atlas co-authored with Lamya al-Faruqi. Together, he and his wife brilliantly mapped out the soul of an entire civilization, really looking at its context, its monotheistic essence, and how it actually manifested in the real world.
Moving on to Axis 2 and 4, Religions and Ideologies, covering his deep critiques of Christian ethics and the roots of Zionism. Now, what's really interesting here is how he connected the dots. He offered this incredibly firm academic critique where he framed Zionism fundamentally as a Western Christian dilemma, rooted in what he called the ontological passage of guilt, that unfortunately got solved at the unjust expense of the Palestinian people and the Muslim Ummah.
And that brings us to Axis 3, the crisis of education and healing the fractured identity. He diagnosed a really severe educational duality in the Muslim world, a split between traditional and modern secular learning, and he saw the Islamization of knowledge as the necessary cure to unify that identity.
Now, this right here brings us to the absolute narrative turning point of his life. Dr. Al-Faruqi could have so easily stayed in the realm of the I, the celebrated individual academic up in the ivory tower just seeking personal prestige. But he realized something crucial. To truly heal the fractured identity of the Ummah and actually spark a civilizational revival, the I is never enough. The ego has to be dismantled. So he actively chose the we. He recognized that real, lasting change requires collective institutional action. He wasn't after a personal position. He wanted to shape the thought of an entire nation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the power of a team. To make this we a reality, al-Faruqi collaborated with some truly brilliant minds to establish the International Institute of Islamic Thought, or IIIT. Alongside him, the founders included Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Taha Jabir al-Alwani, Jamal Barzinji, Hisham al-Talib, Anwar Ibrahim, Ahmad and Jamaluddin Atiyah. Together, this powerhouse of intellect spearheaded the massive project of the Islamization of knowledge. They essentially became a unified brain trust for planning the culture that Muslims so desperately need today. I mean, this is exactly what it looks like when great minds leave their egos at the door for a much higher purpose.
But taking a stance like that comes with profound risks. On the night of May 27, 1986, which was the 18th of Ramadan, the ambassador of the Islamic East to the Christian West was betrayed. Historically speaking, even ancient kings knew never to kill an ambassador. But on this terrible date, Dr. Ismail al-Faruqi and his brilliant wife, Dr. Lamya, were tragically assassinated in their home. He paid with his very soul for the Ummah's awakening. It was the ultimate price for his unwavering defense of Palestine, his fierce ideological critiques of Zionism, and his tireless dawah work in America.
Yet, as the writer Parvez Manzoor so beautifully put it when he heard the news, the ink of the scholar is stronger than the dagger of the traitor. Al-Faruqi's body was taken from us, for sure, but his thought survived. In fact, at the time they were martyred, their absolute masterpiece, the Atlas of Islamic Civilization, was literally still sitting at the printing press. Dr. Hisham al-Talib famously noted that the book was born an orphan, but thankfully it emerged as this incredible, lasting witness to the struggle. As long as there are people conscious enough to take his ideas and run with them, his legacy is alive and well. We ask God to shower him and his wife Lamya with vast mercy and grant them the highest paradise. Amen.
So this leaves us with a pretty critical question for you, the viewer. We are currently living in an era that's just dominated by severe educational and political challenges all over the globe. Conflicts are being fueled, foundational knowledge is totally missing from our curricula, the civilizational dimension is sidelined, and the language of the ego, the I, reigns supreme. Even the Atlas of Civilization itself is often left out of the conversation. So what happens now that al-Faruqi is gone? How are you going to help activate this legacy today? How do we move past our own personal egos, actually embrace the we, and carry this map forward for a collective revival? I really want you to think about that and let it inspire your own pursuit of knowledge. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.